The HFY ship moved through the darkness of space like a hunting beast. Its black metal hull gleamed under distant starlight, covered in sharp spikes and razor edges. Inside the massive vessel, Commander Zexthor stood before a wall of screens, showing his latest prey. Zexthor was 8 feet tall with thick armor plates covering his body like a natural shield. His claws could cut through steel, and his yellow eyes glowed with the hunger of a born killer. For over 300 years, he had led hunting fleets across the galaxy. 200 different worlds had fallen before him. 200 different species had begged for mercy before he ended their lives. The bridge around him buzzed with activity as his warriors prepared for another hunt. Each HFY warrior was a perfect killing machine, bred for war and trained from birth to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. Their deep voices rumbled through the ship as they sharpened their weapons and planned their attack. "Show me the target again," Zexthor growled to his second-in-command. The screens flickered and displayed images of a small blue and green planet on the edge of known space. The planet looked peaceful, with white clouds swirling over large oceans and brown continents. Small cities dotted the surface, connected by roads and surrounded by green farmland. "The species calls themselves humans," his lieutenant reported. "They have been living on this world for about 50 years. Our scouts counted roughly 10,000 of them scattered across 3 main settlements." Zexthor studied the images carefully. The humans looked weak and soft. They had no armor plating, no natural claws or fangs. Their skin was thin and easily damaged. They walked on 2 legs like many species, but they seemed smaller and more fragile than most prey the HFY had hunted before. "What weapons do they possess?" Zexthor asked. "Basic tools and simple machines. Some explosive devices for mining, but nothing that could threaten our ships. They appear to be farmers and miners, Commander. This should be an easy hunt." Zexthor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. An easy hunt was sometimes disappointing, but it would be good practice for his younger warriors. The humans would serve as perfect prey to teach the next generation how to properly instill fear before the kill. The HFY had perfected the art of hunting over thousands of years. They did not simply destroy their prey quickly. That would be wasteful and boring. Instead, they preferred to land on a world and hunt the inhabitants slowly, savoring their fear and desperation. The terror of the prey made the final victory taste sweeter. "How long since they have had contact with other species?" Zexthor asked. "Our records show no contact at all, Commander. They seem to be isolated on the rim of the galaxy, unaware that other intelligent life exists. They will be completely unprepared for our arrival." This made Zexthor even more pleased. Species that had never encountered the HFY provided the purest fear. They had no idea what was coming, no stories or legends to prepare them for the hunt. Their terror would be fresh and intense. On the planet below, the humans continued their daily lives without any knowledge of the danger approaching them. In the main settlement, Captain Jake Morrison walked through the streets checking on his people. Jake was 35 years old with brown hair and kind eyes. He had led the colonists to this world 5 years ago, seeking a peaceful place to build new lives away from the crowded planets of human space. The settlement was small, but well organized. Neat rows of houses lined clean streets, with gardens, and small farms stretching out toward the horizon. Children played in the parks while their parents worked in the fields or the nearby mines. It was exactly the kind of quiet, happy community that Jake had dreamed of creating. "Morning, Captain," called out Amy Rodriguez as she approached. Amy served as Jake's second-in-command, handling security and communications for the settlement. She was a former military officer who had grown tired of war and wanted to help build something peaceful instead. "Morning, Amy. Everything quiet today?" Jake asked. "Same as always. Pete found a new mineral deposit in the eastern mines, and Mary's students are planning some kind of science project. The most exciting thing that happened was Old Bill's chickens getting loose again." Jake smiled. After years of conflict and struggle, this kind of boring daily routine felt like paradise. The colonists had worked hard to build their small piece of heaven on this remote world, far from the politics and dangers of the inner systems. Neither Jake nor Amy noticed the small, dark shape that moved across the sky high above them. The Kethvar scout ship was too far away to see with human eyes, but its sensors were already recording everything about the settlement below. Back on the Kethvar flagship, Commander Zexthor reviewed the scout reports. The humans appeared to have no military defenses at all. Their settlements were open and unprotected. Their people moved about freely without any apparent fear or caution. It was almost too easy. "When do we begin the hunt, Commander?" asked one of his warriors eagerly. Zexthor considered this. His fleet consisted of 12 ships, carrying over 3,000 warriors. They could destroy the human settlements in minutes if they chose to attack directly. But that would rob them of the pleasure of a proper hunt. "We will follow tradition," Zexthor decided. "First, we announce our presence and allow the fear to build. Then we land and begin the hunt proper. I want these humans to understand exactly what is happening to them before the end." The bridge erupted in approving growls from the assembled warriors. They had been traveling for months without a proper hunt, and they were eager to begin. "Prepare the intimidation broadcasts," Zexthor commanded, "and ready the hunting ships. Tomorrow we will show these humans why the Kethvar are the apex predators of the galaxy." The great ship and its escort vessels moved closer to the small blue planet, their crews preparing for what they expected to be another easy victory in their long history of conquest. None of them could imagine that they were about to encounter something completely outside their experience, something that would challenge everything they believed about fear, power, and what it truly meant to be an apex predator. The morning started like any other day on the human colony. Danny Carter was checking the mining equipment when the sky suddenly changed. Dark shapes appeared out of nowhere, massive ships that blocked out the sun. The vessels were enormous, each one the size of a city, covered in spikes and sharp edges that made them look like floating weapons. Danny stopped his work and stared up at the alien ships. He had never seen anything like them before. They were scary looking, but also kind, of silly in a way. The ships had too many spikes, like someone had tried too hard to make them look frightening. "Well, that's new," Danny said to himself, pulling out his communication device. "Hey, Captain Morrison, you might want to take a look at the sky." All across the settlement, people stopped what they were doing to stare up at the strange visitors. Children pointed and asked their parents what the big ships were. Adults gathered in small groups, talking quietly and trying to figure out what was happening. On the flagship above, Commander Zexthor watched the human reaction with satisfaction. The prey had noticed their arrival. Now came his favorite part of any hunt. He activated the communication system that would broadcast his message to the entire planet. "Attention, humans of this world," Zexthor's voice boomed across every speaker in the settlement. His words were translated by the ship's computers into human language. "You have been chosen for the honor of facing the Kethvar in the Great Hunt. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. We have conquered 200 worlds and destroyed countless species. Your time of peace is over." The message continued with descriptions of the terrible fate that awaited the humans. Zexthor spoke of how his warriors would hunt them through their streets and fields. He told them about the other species that had begged for mercy before being destroyed. His voice was designed to strike terror into the hearts of any listener. But something strange happened. Instead of screams or panic, the first sound that came back over the communication channels was a soft, chuckling noise. Danny Carter was still standing by his mining equipment, looking up at the ships. The alien's dramatic speech had struck him, as funny rather than frightening. The whole thing reminded him of old movies where the bad guys always gave long speeches about how evil they were. Did that guy just call himself an apex predator? Danny asked his coworker Lisa Torres, who had come over to see what was happening. "He sounds like he's trying way too hard." Lisa listened to more of the broadcast and started laughing too. "I know, right? It's like he's reading from a script. Who talks like that? And did you see those ships? They look like someone stuck a bunch of kitchen knives to a building." Their laughter carried over the open communication channels. Other humans heard it and started to smile despite their confusion. The alien's speech was certainly dramatic, but it was also kind of ridiculous. When you really thought about it, Captain Jake Morrison had rushed to the communications center when the ships appeared. He listened to the alien message with growing concern, but even he had to admit that the delivery was a bit over the top. "Sir, said Amy Rodriguez, trying to keep a straight face. "I think these aliens have been watching too many horror movies." That whole speech sounded like a villain from a bad science fiction show. More laughter spread through the settlement as people repeated the funniest parts of the alien message to each other. The phrase, "apex predator," became particularly amusing to the humans who started using it jokingly in their conversations. On the Kethavar flagship, Commander Zexthor stared at his communication officers in confusion. In 300 years of hunting, he had never encountered a reaction like this. Prey species were supposed to scream, beg, or at least run and hide. They were not supposed to laugh. "Are the translators working correctly?" Zexthor demanded. "Yes, Commander. All systems are functioning properly. The humans are definitely laughing at our intimidation broadcast." Zexthor felt something he had never experienced before. A small seed of doubt began to grow in his mind. How could a prey species find the mighty Kethavar amusing? It made no sense according to everything he had learned about hunting. "Perhaps they do not understand the gravity of their situation," suggested his lieutenant. "Maybe their species lacks the intelligence to comprehend danger." This explanation made Zexthor feel better. The humans must be too simple-minded to understand what was happening to them. Once his warriors landed and began the actual hunt, the humans would quickly learn to fear the Kethavar properly. "Begin the next phase," Zexthor ordered. "Show them images of our previous conquests. Make them understand what we are capable of." Alien ships began broadcasting holographic displays above the human settlement. The images showed the Kethavar warriors in battle, their claws and teeth tearing through enemy forces. Scenes of destroyed cities and defeated armies played out in the sky like a terrible movie. But again, the human reaction was not what the Kethavar expected. Instead of terror, the colonists seemed to be treating the display like entertainment. "Look at that one," called out Pete Collins, pointing at a hologram of a Kethavar warrior roaring at the camera. "He's really getting into character, isn't he?" "The special effects are pretty good," admitted Carla White. "But the acting is a bit much. Do they always pose that dramatically?" More laughter rippled through the crowd of humans watching the display. Children giggled at the aliens' exaggerated movements while adults made jokes about the overly serious presentation. Zexthor could hear all of this through the communication channels his ship was monitoring. The seed of doubt in his mind grew larger. In his long career as a hunter, he had seen prey species react with fear, anger, desperation, and even resignation, but never amusement. "Commander," one of his warriors reported nervously, "the intimidation displays are not having the desired effect. If anything, the humans seem to be enjoying them." Zexthor's claws scraped against the metal floor of his ship. This was not going according to plan. The humans were supposed to be cowering in their homes by now, not standing around making jokes about his warriors. "Enough," Zexthor growled. "If they will not fear us from a distance, then we will give them a closer look. Prepare the landing parties, we will begin the hunt immediately." Down on the planet, the humans continued to watch the sky show with growing amusement. They had no idea that their laughter was causing panic among their would-be hunters. To them, the whole situation seemed like an elaborate prank or perhaps some kind of strange alien entertainment. "I have to admit," Jake Morrison said to his officers, "if these are our first alien visitors, they certainly know how to make an impression, even if they are a little dramatic about it." The laughter that followed his comment was broadcast directly to the Kethavar fleet, where it was heard by 3,000 confused and increasingly worried alien warriors. The Kethavar landing ships dropped from the sky like falling stars. Each craft was designed to look as frightening as possible, with glowing red engines and hull plating that screamed through the air. They landed in the fields around the human settlement with thunderous crashes that shook the ground. Commander Zexthor led the first hunting party himself, determined to show these strange humans what real fear looked like. He stepped out of his landing craft followed by 20 of his best warriors. Each Kethavar was fully armed and ready for battle, their claws gleaming in the sunlight. The aliens expected to find humans running and screaming. Instead, they found people going about their normal daily activities. Farmer Bill Henderson was tending to his vegetable garden just 50 yards away from where the alien ship had landed. When he saw the HFY warriors emerge, he looked up from his tomatoes and gave them a friendly wave. "Morning, folks," Bill called out cheerfully. "Hope you didn't damage any of my crops with that landing. Those ships of yours sure do make a lot of noise." Zexthor stared at the human in complete confusion. This soft, small creature was supposed to be cowering in terror. Instead, he was complaining about noise and asking about vegetables. The alien commander had no idea how to respond to such behavior. "We are here to hunt you," Zexthor announced, trying to get back to the familiar script of intimidation. "You should be afraid." Bill looked at the 8-foot-tall alien warrior with his armor and claws, then shrugged. "Well, if you're planning to hunt around here, just be careful not to step on the corn. Took me 3 months to get it growing right in this soil." Other humans began to gather around the landing site, drawn by curiosity rather than fear. Mechanic Carla White brought her toolbox over and started examining the alien ship with professional interest. "Nice welding work on the hull," Carla commented to one of the HFY warriors. "Though I have to ask, what's with all the spikes? Seems like they just get in the way during maintenance." The warrior she was talking to looked down at his claws, then back at the small human female who was completely ignoring his threatening presence. For the first time in his life, he felt uncertain about what to do next. Security Chief Ryan Murphy approached Commander Zexthor with the casual confidence of someone greeting new neighbors. "You folks seem to be having some kind of cultural confusion," Ryan said politely. "Is there something we can help you with, maybe some kind of translation problem?" Zexthor tried to roar menacingly, but the sound seemed to bounce off the humans without effect. They looked at him with the same mild interest they might show to a street performer doing tricks. "Look, big guy," Ryan continued, "I can see you're trying to be scary, but it's not really working. You want to tell us what this is really about?" Frustrated and confused, Zexthor decided to demonstrate his hunting prowess by chasing down one of the humans. He spotted Kevin Brooks walking toward the mining tunnels and charged after him with a terrifying battle cry. Kevin heard the alien coming and looked over his shoulder. Instead of running in panic, he grinned and started jogging toward the tunnel entrance. "Oh, we're playing tag now?" Kevin called back. "This should be fun." What followed was the most embarrassing hunt in HFY history. Kevin led Zexthor and his warriors on a merry chase through the mining tunnels, treating the whole thing like a game. He knew every twist and turn of the underground passages, while the heavily armored aliens stumbled and crashed into walls. In the darkness, "Over here, space lobsters," Kevin shouted from somewhere in the tunnels. His voice echoed off the walls, making it impossible for the HFY to figure out where he was. "You're getting warmer. No, wait, now you're getting colder." The other humans gathered at the tunnel entrances to watch the show. They cheered and called out directions to Kevin while laughing at the aliens' clumsy attempts to navigate the narrow passages. "Kevin's winning," shouted Lisa Torres. "Those big guys can barely fit through the smaller tunnels." "Maybe they should try the diet plan," added Danny Carter, causing another wave of laughter from the watching crowd. Dr. Helen King stood at the edge of the group, observing the aliens more carefully than the others. As the colony's medical officer, she was trained to notice things that others might miss. She watched how the HFY warriors moved, how they reacted to the humans' laughter, and how their confident postures seemed to be changing. "Something's not right with them," Helen murmured to herself. The aliens were starting to look less threatening and more confused. Their movements were becoming uncertain, almost clumsy. It was as if the humans' refusal to be frightened was somehow affecting the aliens physically. Inside the tunnels, Kevin continued his game of hide-and-seek with increasingly frustrated alien hunters. "Are you guys okay?" he called out when he heard one of them trip and fall. "You sound like you're having trouble back there. Want me to slow down?" Commander Zexthor emerged from the tunnels covered in dust and breathing heavily. His perfect armor was scratched and dented from bumping into tunnel walls. Several of his warriors looked even worse, with some limping from various tumbles in the darkness. The humans applauded politely as the aliens stumbled out into the sunlight. "Good effort," Bill Henderson said encouragingly. "You'll get the hang of it with practice." Zexthor stared at the assembled humans in growing panic. Nothing was going according to plan. The prey was supposed to run in terror, not treat the hunt like entertainment. His warriors were supposed to be inspiring fear, not becoming objects of amusement. "Why are you not afraid?" Zexthor demanded, his voice cracking slightly. The humans looked at each other and shrugged. "Afraid of what?" asked Carla White. "You seem like decent folks, just a bit dramatic. Are you actors or something? Is this some kind of performance? Art? We are the apex predators of the galaxy," Zexthor roared, but his voice sounded less certain than before. "Sure you are, honey," said Mary Johnson, the local school teacher, in the same tone she used with overexcited children. "That's very nice." The patronizing kindness in her voice hit Zexthor like a physical blow. For the first time in his 300 years of life, the mighty Kethvar commander felt something he had never experienced before. The crushing weight of being laughed at instead of feared. His warriors gathered around him, looking to their commander for guidance. But Zexthor had no idea what to do next. Every hunting strategy he knew depended on inspiring terror in his prey. When faced with creatures who found him amusing rather than frightening, he was completely lost. As the humans continued to chat and joke among themselves, treating the alien invasion as the day's entertainment, something fundamental began to change in the balance of power. The hunters were becoming the hunted, not by violence or superior weapons, but by something far more devastating to their pride, complete and utter indifference to their attempts at intimidation. Word spread quickly through the human settlement about their unusual visitors. By afternoon, most of the colonists had gathered to watch the confused aliens stumble around their town. The Kethvar warriors tried different approaches to frighten the humans, but nothing seemed to work. Teacher Mary Johnson brought her class of 15 children to observe the aliens from what she considered a safe distance. The kids sat on a small hill overlooking the main square, eating lunch and watching the show like it was a field trip to the zoo. "Look at that one, Miss Johnson," said 8-year-old Tommy Lee, pointing at a Kethvar warrior who was trying to look menacing by flexing his claws. "He keeps making the same scary face over and over." "Maybe his face is stuck that way," suggested little Susan Gray, which made all the children giggle. The sound of children's laughter carried across the settlement like music. It was pure and innocent, completely free of any fear or worry. To the human adults, it was a pleasant reminder that life was good. To the Kethvar warriors, it was like being hit with invisible hammers. Commander Zexthor felt his strength drain away as the children's giggles reached his ears. His legs became shaky, and he had to lean against a building to stay upright. Around him, his warriors were experiencing the same strange weakness. "Commander," one of his lieutenants whispered urgently, "something is wrong. I feel sick." Zexthor tried to respond, but his voice came out as a weak croak instead of his usual powerful roar. The human laughter was doing something to them, something that had never happened in thousands of years of hunting. Down in the settlement, maintenance worker Tony Garcia was fixing a broken water pipe when he noticed one of the alien warriors watching him work. The Kethvar was trying to look intimidating, but to Tony he just looked like a big, confused lizard in fancy armor. "You know, buddy," Tony said conversationally, "you might want to sit down, you don't look so good." The alien warrior tried to snarl at him, but the sound came out more like a wheeze. Tony found this even funnier and let out a hearty laugh that seemed to echo off the buildings around them. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Kethvar warrior stumbled backward as if Tony had shoved him hard in the chest. His armor rattled as he fell to his knees, looking up at the human with something that might have been fear in his yellow eyes. "Whoa," Tony said, staring at the fallen alien. "Did I do that?" Other humans had noticed the strange interaction. Communications officer Beth Anderson came over to investigate, followed by several curious colonists. "Tony, what happened?" Beth asked. "I laughed at him and he fell over," Tony explained, still not quite believing it himself. "Watch this." He chuckled again, and the alien warrior flinched away from the sound like it was painful. Beth's eyes widened as she began to understand. The laughter is hurting them somehow. That's why they keep getting weaker every time we laugh. The discovery spread through the human settlement faster than wildfire. Within an hour, everyone knew that their laughter had a physical effect on the aliens. Some of the colonists thought it was the funniest thing they had ever heard. "So let me get this straight," said Farmer Bill Henderson, grinning widely. "These scary space monsters are actually afraid of us laughing at them?" "Seems that way," confirmed Dr. Helen King, who had been studying the aliens' behavior all day. "Every time someone laughs, they get visibly weaker. It's like our amusement is some kind of weapon." The irony was not lost on the humans. The mighty galactic predators who had come to hunt them were being defeated by the very thing that made humans most human: their ability to find humor in any situation. Beth Anderson had an idea. As the settlement's communications officer, she had access to the main broadcast system. "What if we could get our laughter directly to their ships?" she suggested. "If it affects the ones down here, it might work on the whole fleet." Captain Jake Morrison considered this carefully. "Are you sure it's safe? We don't want to make them angry enough to just blow us up from orbit." "Jake," said Amy Rodriguez, "I don't think they can blow us up anymore. Look at them." Indeed, the HFY warriors in the settlement were in bad shape. They moved slowly and carefully like old men with aching bones. Their threatening roars had become weak whispers. Some of them were actually sitting down in the shade looking exhausted. "All right," Jake decided. "Beth, can you hack into their communication system?" Beth cracked her knuckles and sat down at her computer terminal. "Give me 20 minutes." While Beth worked, the other humans began to organize what they jokingly called Operation Giggle. They gathered recordings of their best laughter from throughout the day, including the children's innocent giggles and Tony's booming belly laugh. "This feels weird," admitted Pete Collins, "using laughter as a weapon." "It's not really a weapon," pointed out Mary Johnson. "We're not trying to hurt them, we're just being ourselves. Besides," added Danny Carter, "they came here to hunt us. If they can't handle a little laughter, that's their problem." Beth looked up from her computer with a satisfied smile. "I'm in. Their communication security is pretty basic. I can broadcast directly to their entire fleet." The humans gathered around Beth's workstation as she prepared to send their recorded laughter to the alien ships. On the screens, they could see the massive HFY vessels hanging in orbit above their planet. "Everyone ready?" Beth asked, her finger hovering over the transmission button. The colonists nodded, many of them trying not to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. They were about to defeat a galactic empire with nothing but recorded giggles. "Here goes nothing," Beth said, and pressed the button. The effect was immediate and visible even from the planet's surface. The HFY ships began to shake and drift apart from their tight formation. Emergency lights flickered on across their hulls as the sound of human laughter filled every corridor and room of the alien fleet. On the flagship, Commander Zexthor collapsed to his knees as waves of human amusement washed over him. The bridge erupted in chaos as his warriors stumbled and fell, their strength completely drained by the cheerful sounds coming from their own speakers. "Make it stop," Zexthor gasped, but his communication officers were too weak to reach their controls. The laughter continued for several minutes, layer upon layer of human joy and amusement. There was the gentle chuckling of adults, the wild giggles of children, and the deep belly laughs of people who found life genuinely funny. When the broadcast finally ended, the HFY fleet was in complete disarray. Ships drifted aimlessly, their crews too weak to maintain proper flight control. For the first time in their species' history, the apex predators of the galaxy were completely helpless. Down on the planet, the humans watched their handiwork with a mixture of satisfaction and amazement. They had not fired a single shot or built a single weapon, yet they had defeated the most feared hunting fleet in known space. "Well," said Captain Jake Morrison, trying to process what had just happened, "I guess we're not the prey anymore." The comment struck everyone as hilarious, and another wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. In orbit above them, the HFY ships shuddered again at the sound, and Commander Zexthor realized with growing horror that his perfect predatory species had encountered something they could never defeat, a prey that refused to be afraid. News of the Kethvar defeat spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. Within days, every civilized world had heard the impossible story. The mighty predators who had terrorized the galaxy for 3,000 years had been brought down by creatures who laughed at them. On the human colony, life had returned to something approaching normal, except for the constant stream of alien visitors who came to see the species that had defeated the undefeatable. Ships from dozens of different worlds arrived daily, their crews eager to meet the humans who had accomplished what no military force had ever managed. Captain Jake Morrison found himself reluctantly thrust into the role of galactic diplomat. He sat in his small office trying to answer questions from a delegation of butterfly-like aliens called the Vithrak, who had been enslaved by the Kethvar for over 2 centuries. "We still do not understand," clicked their translator device as one of the Vithrak representatives spoke. "How did you defeat them? What weapons did you use?" Jake rubbed his temples, tired from explaining the same thing dozens of times. "We didn't use any weapons. We just laughed at them. That's all." The aliens looked at each other in confusion. The concept of laughter as a weapon was completely foreign to most species. They had tried everything from advanced plasma cannons to psychic attacks against the Kethvar, but nothing had worked. The idea that simple amusement could bring down the Galactic Empire seemed impossible. "Could you demonstrate this laughter?" asked another Vithrak representative. Jake was about to explain that you couldn't just laugh on command when engineer Pete Collins walked by his office window, carrying what appeared to be a toilet plunger and wearing a colander on his head as a makeshift helmet. "What are you doing, Pete?" Jake called out. "Amy asked me to fix the water recycling system," Pete replied seriously. "This is my advanced alien technology disguise so the visiting dignitaries will think we're more sophisticated than we actually are." The absurdity of Pete's costume and his matter-of-fact explanation struck Jake as hilarious. He started laughing, a genuine belly laugh that filled his office and spilled out into the hallway. The Vithrak representatives stared in wonder, as Jake's laughter seemed to take on a life of its own. They could feel something in the sound, something that spoke to parts of their minds they didn't even know existed. For the first time in their species' history, they began to understand what humans called humor. Meanwhile, the effects of the human victory continued to ripple across the galaxy. On world after world, species that had lived in terror of the Kethvar for generations began to stand up for themselves. The knowledge that the predators could be defeated had broken the spell of fear that had held the galaxy in chains. On the former Kethvar homeworld, Commander Zexthor sat in his chambers trying to understand what had gone wrong. The once mighty predator was a shadow of his former self. His armor hung loose on his shrinking frame, and his yellow eyes had lost their fierce glow. His remaining warriors reported the same problems. They were getting weaker by the day, unable to hunt or even intimidate the slaves who had once cowered before them. Worse, the memory of human laughter echoed in their minds constantly, sapping their strength and confidence. "Commander," his lieutenant reported weakly, "the rebellion on Zarian Prime has succeeded. The Kethvar garrison has surrendered without a fight." Zexthor nodded wearily. It was the 15th world to throw off Kethvar rule in the past month. Their empire was crumbling faster than they could track the losses. "What do the rebels say?" Zexthor asked. "They claim they are no longer afraid because they have learned to laugh like the humans do. Some of them are even making jokes about us." The thought of being mocked by former prey was almost too much for Zexthor to bear. He had built his entire identity around being feared, and now he was becoming a source of amusement for the galaxy. Back on the human colony, Amy Rodriguez was dealing with a different kind of problem. The constant stream of alien visitors was overwhelming their small settlement's resources. "We have delegations from 47 different species wanting to meet with us this week," Amy reported to Jake. "And that's just the ones who made appointments. There are at least a dozen ships in orbit waiting for landing permission." "What do they all want?" Jake asked. "Most of them want to know how to laugh. They think it's some kind of secret weapon. They can learn. A few want to hire us as mercenaries to fight other oppressive species. And the Galactic Council wants to offer us membership as a founding member of something called the Free Worlds Alliance." Jake shook his head in amazement. A few months ago, they had been simple colonists trying to build a quiet life on the galactic rim. Now they were apparently the leaders of a galactic revolution. "What should I tell them?" Amy asked. Before Jake could answer, the sound of children's laughter drifted in through the open window. Mary Johnson's class was having recess, playing a game of tag in the schoolyard. Their innocent joy was the same sound that had brought down a galactic empire. "Tell them the truth," Jake decided. "We're not warriors or revolutionary leaders. We're just people who happen to find life funny sometimes. If they want to learn to laugh, they need to learn to see the world the way we do." This message, simple as it was, became the foundation of what historians would later call the Laughter Revolution. Species across the galaxy began to study human culture, trying to understand how a people could find humor in the face of danger. Some succeeded better than others. The Vithrak proved surprisingly good at practical jokes, while the crystal-based silicants developed a form of humor based on mathematical absurdities. Even species that couldn't laugh in the human sense began to develop their own forms of joy and amusement. The Kethvar, meanwhile, faded from galactic importance almost overnight. Without the ability to inspire fear, they had no way to maintain their power. Many of them retreated to remote worlds, trying to understand how their perfect predatory nature had become their greatest weakness. Commander Zexthor spent his final years studying recordings of human laughter, trying to comprehend the power that had destroyed his species' dominance. He never did understand it completely, but in his last days, some of his warriors claimed they heard him make a sound that might have been a chuckle. The human colony continued to grow and prosper, though it never lost its small-town character. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the place where the Laughter Revolution had begun, and many stayed to learn from the people who had taught the universe that joy was stronger than fear. Years later, when asked about their role in galactic history, most of the colonists would just shrug and smile. They had never set out to conquer an empire or liberate the galaxy. They had simply been themselves, and sometimes that was enough to change everything. As Pete Collins often said when giving tours to alien visitors, "We didn't beat the Kethvar because we were stronger or smarter. We beat them because we remembered that life is supposed to be fun, and once you forget how to be afraid, it's amazing what becomes possible." The comment never failed to make the visiting aliens think, and some of them even managed to laugh.